Hi there. Welcome to our Open the Box webinar for private equity and M&A. Happy to see you here. How's everyone doing? You can let me know in the chat if it's too early or you just came out of a big meeting. Then you can feel free to ignore me and just hang around until we wait for some more people to join and dive into everything. All right. See some more people joining. Let's give them a few more minutes. Start at 3 past. Dive into it. There we go. So welcome again, everyone. If you joined a little later, again, thank you for being here. Very excited to show you guys how you can leverage Open the Box in private equity and M&A. So a little bit, if you're not already a user or a client, a little bit about me. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Open the Box. What is Open the Box? We provide real-time data on 2 million plus Belgian companies. We have a unique network view of administrators and participations for every company, where it's published at least. We have granular market search parameters and automatic deal sourcing in our advanced search, which is something I'll show you more about, of course. And then we have our own calculated ratios you need, like EBITDA, the added value, turnover per employee is one that's coming soon, and we have other PE ratios coming up soon. I think for the M&A players in the room, something we'll also be releasing shortly is consolidated accounts and being able to filter for companies that are known to publish consolidated accounts, so that you don't go out targeting companies already part of a larger structure. All right, let's go into our next slide. So what will we cover today exactly? We're going to start by leveraging Open the Box for finding ideal investment opportunities. So we're going to match some investment criteria to financial data points. Meaning we're going to look at stuff like, what's the EBITDA range you ideally want to look for? Are there certain sectors? Are there other financial parameters that we can be looking at? The amount of employees a company should have ideally to be an ideal investment target. We're going to look at how we then use those same parameters and that same search to run our deal sourcing on autopilot. So how can we create generative deal flow based on those same investment criteria, so that we can just set it and forget it. Basically, you get a notification every time a company fits your criteria. Then, of course, once you've researched the market, you'll want to research individual companies that come from that search. So how do you do that with openthebox? How do you do it quickly? And what makes openthebox stand out for people like you? And if you're already using openthebox, what more could you do with the information that we have on offer? It's not only when you're doing searches that matters, also when you hear rumors or you get any wind of opportunities from your network, then you can run a quick analysis to see if it's worth exploring further. All right. I'd say let's not waste too much time on talking about what we're going to cover and just start to cover what we have in store for you guys. So I'll stop the presentation and start sharing my tab here. So here we are inside openthebox. I'm going to show you guys here. Let's start from our advanced search. Like I said, basically in PE and M&A, you'll typically want to have a look at what is going on in the broader Belgian market. So for starters, as you can see, we've got 2,090,906 companies that we can start searching between. We have a lot of things here on our left-hand side. Of course, we can search for companies. We can also search for persons. Let's say I select that, then you'll see that the number here changes, right? You can also look between politicians and such. But let's start from the basics. So companies. We have a lot of things at our disposal here to work with for filtering the market. Of course, you want to narrow it down as much as possible because you don't want to be analyzing 1,000 companies. So you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of what makes your company qualified for any kind of investment from your end, or what makes a company a good target for the M&A clients you're working with, or makes them a good target to try and get a mandate from them. So we've got NACE codes at our disposal. We've also got activities. This is based on what we can detect from companies' own website. Why do we do that? NACE codes don't always cover everything, right? They're an official code, but as you can see, I can show you later on, a lot of companies will use several NACE codes. Some even have an absolute crazy amount of them. And sometimes one NACE code can also entail several different, let's say, sub-activities. So it's an imperfect measure, let me put it that way. Therefore, we've added this feature where we detect activities based on what companies themselves say that they do on their website, which is often the best measure. It's not as complete because we can't detect it for every company, but it also helps filter out things like holdings. That can otherwise end up in your search. All right, so we can also search for joint committees. It's a feature I'll use in a search shortly. Then we can look for legal situations, look for legal persons or natural persons. And then what you'll see here is, let's say I turn off the natural persons. That means I turn off, I immediately filter out all the one-man companies, typically. Now, it can be a bit tricky because one-man companies can have staff. Maybe they're actually quite a successful company. They just neglected switching to a new type of entity. But in general, those won't be your investment targets. You'll want to, of course, look for active companies. Let's say you're doing market research and you want to look historically, then maybe you'll also want to look at inactive companies. Right, so these are all things that you can play with. But of course, the real juice is hidden here in the financial and social parameters, where we can add custom filters. So we've added some sliders here for the most important parameters, of course, like EBITDA, gain, loss, gross operating margin, and such. financial health indicator. I'll dive a little deeper into that one later. But most importantly here, you can use anything from the trends, the financial ratios, the social balance, the active and passive parameters on the balance sheet, and then income and everything, right? So we can go really deep. I'm going to show you a few typical ones that can narrow down stuff quite a lot. You can also look at active status, something that I'll use in practice right away. So I suggest we just create a first search here. So what I would typically already do, so I've filtered out all of the natural persons already, because they're sort of typically disqualified in this type of scenario. We want to look at an EBITDA between 1 million and 5 million. Right, so that's the first thing. Now we've got 11,740 companies left. Let's say we want them to have some equity. It's okay for them to have some negative equity. We don't want the equity to be too high though, because then an acquisition can become impossible, right? So impossible, I'm sorry. That leaves us with 1,344 companies. So something a little bit more grainy already for us to work with, right? We're getting more granular. Maybe we want to make sure that it's not a holding company. So in this case, I'm going to make sure that we're above 10 employees. Let's say we don't want more than 100, because again, that might be a complicated acquisition. We're left with 495 companies now. Let's say I want them to be founded after 2010 because I'm in private equity and I want to acquire a company. If I want to acquire a company, they don't only need to just fit financial parameters. There also needs to be a shot for me at actually acquiring this company, meaning the owner needs to be willing to sell. Right, the chances are just a lot higher once you start looking at companies founded before 2010. Right, anything later than that, probably a younger founder, or a lot more likely to be a younger founder, not willing to sell quite as much. Okay, so now we can play with things like the joint committee or the NACE codes, where we want to look at, let's say, the joint committees. There's one here. This is for, well, in Dutch we call it the dienstenchecks, so the service checks. Let's say suddenly we've got one left here that actually definitely fits these parameters, right? Yes, we've found our ideal target here. Let's say we start looking at something else. We could say here, computer. So computer, sorry. Say at manufacturing, suddenly we're left with 4 companies here that definitely fit these parameters, something that we can work with here. We can also then again try to expand a little bit more. Maybe you want to look at some more employees. We want to maybe look at some more equity on the balance sheet. Now we've got a lot more targets, so we can play around with our searches to really find what we're looking for here in terms of suitable companies, let's say. All right, what we could also do is let's say we start afresh. Let's go back to our advanced search. An example of the real activities here. I'm going to actually describe the activity, right? And suddenly we're going to be looking at drones companies, right? This is an example of something that we would never find just by using an ACE code. A lot of companies here that are doing something with drones. We could, for instance, here, what we already see is that the EBITDA in general is a lot different here. Let's say we want to get a better view of how this EBITDA stacks up across the industry. We could look and see that, okay, we're going to have some companies here that are in the higher EBITDA range already. We could look at, let's say you're looking at follow-on investments, for instance. You could also look for the lower EBITDA margins first. And so then I'm now learning we can filter out the negative EBITDA margins, for instance. Yeah, now we're getting a slightly better view of what is possible. Let's say we want an EBITDA above 100K. So there are quite a lot of those acquisitions we could make here, actually, right? To show you just how granular you can go, let's say you're looking at really small acquisition targets. Something else we can do is we can go even down to one city, right? So like that again. We can look at artisanal bread makers. Let's say we then want to see the ones with a lower financial health indicator to see which ones might be easy acquisition targets. And suddenly we've got a few different possibilities here. I'm going to take this EBITDA filter back. Yeah. All right. So suddenly we've got all of these companies here. Let's take one of them here. We're in the winter circus. So is Desenbrood & Co. This is Bakkerklaas. We can have a look at everything they're doing. And this is the other part of openthebox, right? So we've just actually gone from our search here, and we can go and analyze an individual company direct from this. So let's say I want to be notified of whatever happens based on these parameters. I can save this search, and I can say, all right, so this is purely hypothetical, of course. I've created a list now of artisanal bread makers in the Ghent area. Let's say I'm looking for a follow-on investment in a certain region, right? Maybe I'm consolidating artisanal bread makers right here. Okay, so now every time a company fits these parameters, I'm going to get a notification. So de facto, I've created a small deal sourcing model here. With the next step, of course, being, let's look at one of these individual companies, right? Now, what can we find out about an individual company? By the way, feel free to interrupt me. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions. If you want to run any kind of search based on your parameters, we can do it live. And we can also analyze a company live if you want. All right. So let's look at the profile. We can see immediately who is behind Desenbrood & Co. We can see their broader spider web. Why am I showing you this? It's not the most advanced profile we'll have because it's a fairly new company. It's a fairly small company. Just showing you this to prove that even for smaller companies, openthebox will have a lot of information. You know? So we have their financials here. We have their gross operating margin, the gain loss EBITDA. We've benchmarked it as well. So it's annualized as well over 1 and 3 years. But we also show the absolute numbers here to so that if there are any strong peaks or strong troughs, you can actually see those as well. So the financial health indicator we see could be better. It's fairly typical for younger companies, though. We can find their publications here. Of course, as you see, there's one tab here that's been grayed out. That's because they haven't been in the news. Right? For a smaller, young, local company, that's a bit more likely to happen. We can look at all of the companies at the same address, and then you'll see a lot of startups here because they're all at the Winter Circus. We can filter that out, and we can just look at the spider web here. So let's see here. Okay, so DSM & Co only administers one company. There's Floris van Damme. We see that he administers 9 companies, right? So let's look at this. Suddenly, we see a lot more hospitality businesses here in his network. Let's see here. She administers one company. There's only one company here. And there's nothing more here. Okay, so we can see here Van Damme Floris as well. We could also try to click this. See, okay, there's nothing more to find here. We can expand a little further, and then we find some more people in the same spider web. We can expand a little further until we see the entire expanded network behind this one company that we've been evaluating. Really, we can look at the mandates. So we've already basically seen these. It's pretty straightforward here. There are no administrator mandates. There is some historic information here though, so we can see some people here. We can see class, and probably if we look further here, we'll find some more things. So you can always keep going and explore more. Participations here, you'll see that we'll have things here that are exclusively mentioned in publications. So in this case, there's no publication of the amount of shares held by anyone, and there are no participations. That means nothing has been published here. What we'll still do then is we'll mention who we can detect in publications, and some things that we're working on, for instance, is being able to detect more of these things from different sources. All right, then we can see who's on the same address. In this case, of course, it's basically a corporate site. So there are a lot of companies here. But let's say you want to detect any kind of, malicious hidden economic activity that is actually related, then you can find that here. You'll also always find the historic information, and same for people. You can dive deeper into the financials. So always give the financial ratios insofar as we're able to detect all the necessary information. And we go really deep in that sense. Also the liquidity ratios and such. Also customer credit or supplier credit insofar as it's been published. Or the necessary things have been published. Then the annual accounts will always give the full deep dive. In this case, we can see they're shortened annual accounts, meaning we have a bit less information here than for a company that is part of the structure of a listed company, for instance, right? In consolidated structures. Then we have our social balance. Also here we can see the fluctuations in the amount of employees. We can see how many people are full-time, how many people are part-time, what's the total in full-time equivalent. So we have quite a lot of part-time people, but the equivalent is around 3. Number of hours, personnel costs, and this is where we're going to take turnover per employee from, of course, right? Okay, then our publications. This is where we will dive deep into everything we can detect. So everything that's been digitized, we will have. This is for a young company, so we obviously have everything. We have their activities here, establishments. So in this case, we have their establishment here as well. We have all of their NACE codes from the establishments all as well, and some historic information here. We can look at the history, and then memberships means they are part of a list, right? And then in this case, they are part of an entity search. All right. So that's for for a smaller company and the amount of information that we still have. Let's look at what that looks like if we look at a larger company. So Mediafin, not the largest, but part of the Roularta structure. Roularta is a publicly listed company, so we have more information there. Of course, in that case, the spider web already starts out more complicated, but we also have a de facto cap table for a company like Mediafin because all of the shares are owned by two corporations. They both own 50%, so we know basically the cap table of Mediafin. We also know their participations in other companies very well because they're all officially published. We have a lot more information here in the financials, and then obviously in this case we have the news as well. Obviously, for a media company, there's quite a lot of news about them. If you look here at the spider web, we'll find a lot more still. Let's say we look at Bernard Marchand. If we click here, sorry, I clicked wrong. If we click at this icon, we will find the 47 other companies that he administers as well, right? A lot of information. We can reset that as well. We can look at our CEO, Peter, and see his companies as well. Again, we can undo that. We can basically explore that whole spider web, but the same goes for the participations, right? So basically, it can tell you exactly all of the consolidation above a company up to the holding company above Rossel, and the same goes for Roularta here, where we can also go up to Koekelcoren, West Investment Holding, and then this here as well. So let's undo that for now as well. We can explore this whole participation spider web. We can look at the mandates, which will be a lot richer in information as well here. We can look at a lot of historic information where we can, for instance, see that in the past, Erik de Keulen was an administrator who also had a political mandate at the time, or has a political mandate, at least currently. So that's what the purple icon here indicates. And we can also see that Peter Quagebeur, the CEO, administers Mediafin through his entity Wildcard Concepts. All right. There's also administrator mandate at the Cross-Mediaal Consortium, where Mediafin sends Partgunst. And there was another administrator mandate in the past. Participations here, we can also detect, like I said, in this case, we'll also detect the type of stock that both companies hold and what the effect of that type of stock is on their share of the equity and the net result. Right. Then participations here in other companies, we can also show the parent companies here. Of course, they are one and the same as the shareholders. We can look at the same address again. In this case, there's nothing, but we see several entities that have somehow become part of Mediafin. In the meantime, financials way deeper. You'll find here the annual accounts go quite deep, so they're complete. You can always download the management report and the accountant's report. We can look at the auditors, and we can look at tax reductions as well. So this is a lot richer in information, obviously, because there's more obligations they're more obligated to publish all of these things, right? Same for the social balance; it goes a lot deeper. News obviously goes quite deep as well. Publications very deep. Same for activities here. And the establishments, we have everything from their history as well, and then the history here goes even deeper. So companies that have been absorbed by Mediafin. That's basically two big things that you can do with openthebox. Just want to check real quickly if there are any questions already. If not, I'll go into some more advanced things that you can do with openthebox as well. I don't see any questions, so I'm assuming I'm just jumping into it. All right. let's say we go back to our artisanal bread makers here, and we now want to save these also as companies as a static list. That means we get one list where exactly these companies are included, and I can get notified whenever something happens in these companies. So they have new annual accounts, all the way down to they have a new notary. I can be notified of all those things. I'm going to call it again, artisanal bread makers, and I'm going to create it. Now, I'm going to look at this list. There's some things that I can do here. So first of all, I can share it with my team members so that they can also look at this list. I can manage my notifications, of course, like I said, annual accounts, all the way to roles, news articles, and any kind of updates from the KBO in general. I can show the spider web. I can basically see the spider web behind these companies to see if there are any interlinked companies, or is there anything else going on here. I can look at the participations here as well. Is there any funny stuff going on here? So you can see that some of these are actually more connected than others, and then I can go deeper and look at how exactly that is working. Right. So we see that some businesses here are more interlinked than some are obviously more separate. You can use this information for whatever you want. It can give you an indication of which businesses to invest in and which you want to skip out. Basically here already a lot of shareholders and administrators. What you can also do is recommend similar entities. What this will actually do is it'll unveil basically companies in the wider network of these same companies and of these same administrators. So you can choose up to 2 hops. That means 2 degrees of separation. You can choose whether they are companies that administer, participate, or are parent of. You can also do the same for persons. So let's try it first for companies, these degrees of separation, and let's look at the list. So suddenly from this wider network, we've gone from 98 companies to, let's have a look here. Yeah, quite a lot more from that same network, right? We can also look at who are the main contacts within these companies and the entities that come with them, right? So suddenly we've got quite a long list. We can actually simplify that same part as well. We can look at the clusters, right? Where are the biggest concentrations? So this is basically the list view of what we saw in the spider web earlier. You can also save all of this, of course. Let's go back to our recommended similar entities. We can also actually do this for just give me a list of all the people that administer these companies. Then if I press this, I'm going to get exactly that list. And now I can export this list, and I've got all of the decision makers behind my hypothetical list of companies here. All right. So this is a little hack in openthebox that I recommend to a lot of our customers and users. All right. I think I've shown a lot of what you can do with openthebox in PE and M&A. If there are any specific questions, I'd love to cover them with you now. We've still got quite some time left for Q&A as well. So I'll open myself up to that for you. I can always go back and share my screen. Any questions here? I'll wait around a little bit more for questions, but if there's nothing here, then I'm sure you all have exploding deal flow to attend to. So I will let you get to that, but feel free to drop a last question, and I'll wait around for a few more minutes. All right, thanks for being here, guys. I think I'll let you get back to your day. I hope it was useful for you. Let us know if you want more of these types of webinars, and if there's anything else we can do for you, let me know. See you next time. All right. Thank you. Bye. Oh, thanks, Vera. Bye.